I think there are two basic reasons why it's taking such a long time to get the message across. One of it is to do with the transmitter, and the other is to do with the receiver. And if we start with the receiver first, is that when Dick and I first set up Seymour Powell, which is 27 years ago now, we found ourselves on a lot of things like Department of Trade and Industry roadshows and what have you, talking to British manufacturers, and suddenly realising that they hadn't the faintest idea what we were talking about. And I could get it pretty much because they were only one generation away from the original engineering principles that a lot of businesses were set up in during and immediately after the Industrial Revolution. And so part of it's a inertia built into the system of the receiver. And so I make a great point about, with new clients, building a receiver. By that I mean preparing that client and its metabolism for the violence of the new. And this is what design, good design often is about. It's about metabolically shifting and changing how business works. And the other problem is on the transmit side, which is design and designers themselves, is that I believe that what we do and what I do, I like to feel, is bounded by high principles of ethics and what have you. I'm a designer. I love what I do. I care about people. But one should never forget the design is about it's about money. It's not art. It is about making something more attractive than something else and therefore doing better commercially. And this is something that I think a lot of designers have a problem understanding, is that if you're going to understand that you're going to be working in this place, the first thing you have to do is learn the language of business, which is different from business itself, and understand what it is that motivates the client in such a way that you can present your ideas in a way that the client can understand and generate or determine a vocabulary, a common parlance, that we both use. Now, that doesn't mean you have to turn to the dark side and become someone who says leverage all the time. But what it does mean is that you need to understand that the motivations of the client will not be the same as yourself, necessarily. And so one has to go in that direction. I certainly found a concomitant parallel, a very strong correlation between our ability to communicate what it is that we do and our ability to actually do it. And we learnt that first, I think, working with British Rail 15 years ago, which was we spent 2/3 of the design budget on talking to people and preparing them, and then the other third on actually doing it. And it was much more successful because of that. My answer to that is you're dead, you just don't know it. Yeah. You're a dead man walking. And funny enough, not because of design, it's because of communication. We are back in a very strange place, again, which a lot of people don't seem to get. We're back to the Middle Ages in communications terms. If the blacksmith's crap in the village, everybody knows it. We're back to that. We are back to that, but it's global. So if you say something that's not true, you get shot to hamburger in YouTube immediately. If you lie, you die. It really is the case. It's that as long as you have validity in what you do, what the thing that you're creating or manufacturing has a eternal value and is understood and comprehended for what it is, then good on you, mate. If you've got that, fantastic. But you'd be surprised how few people have in the shifting matrix that is our existence at the moment. And so I would say that one has to be very, very careful about that kind of smugness. And for the simple reason that the future is not what the past is. What I've learned over the last 30 years now, I guess, is that especially in product design, where so much is at stake, time-wise and financially, is that you go right to the top of the business. And that's easier said than done, especially to young people who go, well, I don't stand a prayer of doing that, how do you do it? With Unilever, who I've worked with for a long time, it took me 6 years to work my way up the fire escape, from coming in at the bottom at the more lowly work levels right the way up to the board to influence what they were doing. So it does take time, and people shouldn't imagine it can happen immediately. However, the higher up the organism you get, the more likely you are to prevail. So I've made a point about what I call Trojan horsing, about getting inside, keeping my powder dry, getting inside with the right language and then the right way, and then exploding inside once you've got it, got there their trust. And I think the point about the empathy issue or one-on-one, I've always made it a personal principle, always to speak to the person, not to the job description. If you go in and, this is an MD, or this, is that you very quickly determine what that person is and how they like to talk and think and be, and what their issues are, and address those directly. And that takes a certain amount of experience, I think, but it's not impossible, to pick that up. And one will be much more effective accordingly. I have a personal way of working, so I actually get very close with the client. And that may seem odd for somebody who uses plain language, as you might put it, but the fact is that once you're in at a level of confidence, once you've stripped away all of the rubbish and the ridiculous marketing gobbledygook and all the other crap that just doesn't mean anything, as you say, more noise than anything else, once you get down to the truth, then these things almost do it themselves. It's amazing. I've often said that 3/4 of any design project is finding the truth. Once you found the truth, the thing has virtually designed itself, once you do that. In the foreseeable future, space is the final frontier, but not the space you think. It's inner space. It's the space of microbiology. It's the space of chemistry. It's the space of stem cell regenerative characteristics and asymmetric division. It's the world of something utterly and completely different. And so I think, did you ever see the Ray Eames wonderful thing called To the Power 10, where it was all done on a rostrum camera, zoomed right out into space and right back into microorganisms? It was fabulous, and it was shown to me when I was at the Central in the 70s, and I've never forgotten it. That's the answer to the question if we talk about space. Which space do you actually mean? The position that we're in at the moment is very straightforward. What we can achieve technologically outstrips our ability to imagine it so far that we're now in a glorious position, which is that we don't think about what we can do, we think about what we should do. And if we embrace that, and if we're wise, and if we really locate ourselves in the thinking of what's right and good for people, then the world gets better. But if we ignore it, and if our major practitioners run away into a corner and redesign salt and pepper pots for Italian luxury goods companies instead of absolutely locating their brains onto the reality of the enormous forces that surround us and the incredible future that's unrolling in front of us, then it won't be a good place.